Hey everyone, welcome back to Motor Psychology. My name's Jonathan. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Your support is greatly appreciated. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing the removal of a power steering control valve from that C3 Corvette. It's an interesting process. You have to pop a few ball joint type of things, tie rod end, and then remove this power steering control valve. Initially, I thought I was going to refurbish it. After taking it off, I'm pretty much sure I'm going to replace it. Enjoy the video and let's get into it. Just showing the general location of the power steering control valve, which is hooked up to the relay rod and a few other steering components. So, trying to take this steering control valve off here. So this part needs to come off first. That's just a compression type of fitting, and that will release it from this steering rail here. To get this done, I'm going to have to pop the tie rod end off of this as well. My main goal will be to get this thing off, and then also up here it's kind of like a ball joint, so I'm going to need a ball joint spreader to get that off. And I also will take off the power steering lines, which are up here, and there's a couple on the back end as well, so I'll have a look at those. When you do this, you want to remember where the lines came from, so that when you go and put it back together, you can put it back in the same order as before. These ones I don't have to take off right now. It's the two on the top, which you can barely see, which I'm going to take off. But first, I'm going to take a couple pictures of this area before I do. I'm just assessing the situation on what I need to do to get this off, having a look at it. It's pretty close spaces under the C3, so I'm also removing some of the oily gunk that's on the components, especially on the components that I want to remove. So up here I'm scraping some gunk off that ball joint area, and then I'm going to move down and get some gunk off the tie rod end, and also straighten some of the ends of the cotter pin, getting that ready for removal, which I'm going to do right away. I'm just getting ready here to pinch the wires back on the cotter pin, get them straight enough so I'll be able to pull the cotter pin out. So it's just a matter of getting them straight, and I thought this was going to be really difficult on this because it hasn't been done before, but it all went pretty smoothly, and I'm just getting set up to pull the cotter pin out, which I'm going to be doing right now. Also getting ready to remove the nut from the tie rod end, and just getting ready to do that right now. There we go. That's off. Now we're on to the next job of trying to remove the control valve from the tie rod end and relay rod. As always with the work that I'm doing under this C3, there's not a lot of space underneath, so I'm trying to get some leverage to hammer on this pickle fork. At the end of the day, I'm letting the pickle fork do the work. I'm not going to wiggle it. The pickle fork has wedge-shaped fork ends, which will provide enough leverage that the two parts will eventually separate. Perfect. So the tie rod is out. It's out of the way. I'll take that sucker off. So now I'm looking for that compression fitting that's on the steering control valve, and it's just a matter of unscrewing that bolt from there, and that'll do it for that part. So here we go. Okay, that's it. So here we are back at the steering control valve. The next step that I'm going to be doing is removing the cotter pin and the nut of the ball joint for the steering control valve. So I'm just having a look at it right now, and I'm trying to go in there with my needle nose pliers to straighten the cotter pin off, and then I'll be moving on to trying to get the nut on top of the ball joint off of the steering control valve. So that's what's going to happen next, and let's see how it goes. Yeah, the spaces are really tight. I'm in there with a scribe, or it basically looks like a screwdriver, but it's got the pointed tip. So I'm reaching under there trying to identify and grab the ends of the cotter pin so that I can find them, straighten them out, and get this cotter pin ready for removal. So one of the ends of the cotter pin was totally hidden under a bunch of junk, but once I eventually found it, I was able to get them straightened out and hopefully pull them out. So let's see this process. Yep, lots of grease, lots of oil, lots of banging my knuckles on various metal components here, but with some persistence, finally got it off. There we go. Got the cotter pin out of the ball jointish type of thing. Now I got to get this off and then pop it. Just getting ready to take the nut off the top of the ball joint, and you can see once again pretty tight spaces, and also keep in mind that I have the power steering cylinder removed already. I also have the oil pan removed, plus I also have the Y-shaped exhaust removed as well, and that's giving me a little bit more space than what you'd normally have. So that's a 3/4 inch socket up there. I don't know if this is going to fit in. Not. Trying to find a good area where I can have some leverage to pull on that nut that's on top of that ball joint. Wow. I'm definitely happy that that cracked, and that gives me a good feeling that I am well on my way to being able to get this thing off. So if I can get the nut off, then I'm in a position where I can start trying to get that ball joint removed, and that's what I'll be moving on to next. But overall, pretty satisfied that I'm able to get the nut off the ball joint. That's a great starting point. Okay, the ball joint nut is off as well, so I'm good for removing this. I'm just going to get set up and get this done. One of the tools I'm going to use is this ball joint separator as well. So we're going to see how that works and take it from there. Okay, time to fire this in. It's going to go in between the steering control valve and the pitman arm, and when it comes together, it's going to pop it out. So let's slide that in first. I'm trying to push this ball joint separator as deep into the ball joint pitman arm area as possible so that I can maximize the leverage advantage that this tool is going to give me. So let's see how it goes. It's all about getting the socket wrench on the ball joint separator, tightening the bolt so that the separator puts pressure on the ball joint in between the joint and the pitman arm. Starts putting more and more pressure on the ball joint to pop it off. Adding a little bit of percussive force to this to hopefully induce some sort of shock that may help in the separation of this ball joint. I'm just backing off this ball joint separator here, and then I think I'm going to move on to using the pickle fork again to try and pry this off. So like I said in the intro, getting this ball joint type of thing off of this is not the easiest job whatsoever. By doing the tapping here on the pickle fork, I'm hoping to add some percussion to the ball joint to hopefully get it to loosen up a little bit. After all, I'm pretty sure this thing's been in place for 44 years, so tapping is there to create the percussion and the vibration to hopefully free it up better. Going back in there for the second time with the ball joint separator tool, and hopefully I will be able to create enough force to pop this ball joint off. I'm working on cranking this up as tight as I can get it, and hopefully that'll be good enough. It's definitely getting tight, and I can only imagine the type of force that is being created by this ball joint separator. So a lot of tension in there, and hopefully enough to pop it off. Now that came off with a pretty decent pop. Finally, that's out. So here's the steering control valve. That little ball joint is out from the pitman arm, which is up there. And now I'm either going to cut these or try and take them off. So here I am using brake line wrenches to get a good grip on the cap at the end of the line and hopefully able to unscrew them. So once again, I'm pretty sure these have been on for 44 years. So we'll see how it goes and take it from there. There we go. I don't know if you guys can see that, but this guy's moving. Yeah, it's an awkward spot here, lots of awkward angles, tight spaces, and trying to get this brake line wrench into the right spot all the time is not as easy as it looks. It's not difficult, it's just a tight spot, that's all. That's off. Almost. There we go, you can see that that line has now been removed. One more to take off. Just gotta figure out what size it is. This nut's on really tight, so I'm using the relay rod for additional leverage and stability. Oh my goodness. Just wondering if anybody noticed what had happened there. I certainly didn't notice in real time, but I found out soon enough. Wow. I don't know if you guys can see, but this just cracked. So that means I'll be buying a new one, which is really fine by me. I'm glad I found out now, because I wouldn't want to do all the cleaning and the refurbishing of this and then put it all back together and find that part of the casting break off. So I'm happy it happened now, and that way I can make a decision to buy a new one. See if I can get this off the relay rod. That would be really good. Okay, now one of the goals is to get this off of here, which is probably not going to be so easy. I'm just trying to spread this crack here on the power steering control valve so that it'll be easier to take off from the relay rod. I'm just coming in here with the vise, so I'll be able to secure the relay rod in that and be able to take out the power steering control valve a little bit easier. So this should work fine, and let's see how it goes. Little bit of vise adjustment on my makeshift workbench here. Okay, there's the setup there. So this power steering control valve is attached to the relay rod. It's screwed on there. So what I'm trying to do is to crack the tension on the screw. So I kind of back turn it, and then once it's loose, I'll come all the way around and then unscrew it off the relay rod. So generally everything worked fine for this. So happy with it, and the most important part for me at this point is that the relay rod stays in great shape, because I'm going to reuse that. It's a valuable part. I want to keep it, I want to refurbish it, and then use it on the C3. The steering control valve is definitely a replaceable part, and something that you could expect to replace periodically on your C3. Yeah, it's too bad this thing is such a mess, because I would have really liked to have refurbished it and reused it. But that being said, I'll be looking forward to getting a new one and then screwing that back on the refurbished relay rod. There we go. That's off. And because it's broken, it's probably garbage. But probably a good investment to get a new one anyway. Scrape off some of this old junk. So this is a C3 power steering control valve, and now it's off. Time to get a new one and to replace it. Hey everyone, that completes part 1 of the video where I'm switching out the power steering control valve from the steering mechanism. So I thought I was going to be able to refurbish this one, but clearly it's beyond that. So I'm just going to buy a new one. I'll show the installation of that once I get the new one, and we'll continue on with part 2 of this series of the power steering component. So I hope you found the video interesting. It was kind of tough to shoot the right angles on the power steering control valve, but you'll find that if you ever have to do this, that anything that you notice in this video will be helpful. As far as some of the tricky areas is getting the ball joint type of mechanism off the top of the power steering control valve, and also releasing it from the tie rod end as well. So those are some of the tricky ones. The rest of it is pretty straightforward and something that you could do. One of the things that I used for reference for this one was this book here, and I'm sure many of you people have it. And in there is a pretty good couple pages on how to do that stuff. So, you know, going back to some of the old school to help me out to get this video done is okay by me. So thanks very much for your support, and I'll have another video very, very soon. So we'll see you in that one.